Hello everyone, Eric Hurst here. It's Monday, July 5th. I'm coming to you from Rifle, Colorado, where I'm finishing up a bit of a climbing stay here. I've been living out of a tent the last couple of weeks. So do I look okay after being in a tent for a couple of weeks? Today, going to drive up to Wyoming for a bit, visit some friends, do a little bit of climbing, go to the Climbers Festival, representing La Sportiva and Fizzy Vantage. And so I'm really looking forward to that. Wyoming is one of my favorite places representing La Sportiva and Fizzy Vantage to visit. And let me just shut my phone off here so I don't have to listen to myself feedback. In any case, I wanted to do a quick catch up here with Training Café. It's been a few weeks and I enjoy meeting up with you and talking training and climbing. And of course, let's not forget to sip coffee together, because that is what Training Café is all about. Talking training, talking climbing, and drinking some coffee. So let's commune together in the spirit of climbing. Coffee, always good, morning, noon. And well, I don't drink it at night, but I could probably. I just wouldn't be able to sleep very well. In any case, I'm going to keep this short today because I do have a long drive to make, and we'll get back into the groove when I kind of get back to home and back to my regular work schedule. Meeting up every couple of weeks here at noon Eastern or 10 a.m. Mountain Time with the Training Café. And if you're just joining now, I see we have a visitor from Czech Republic joining in. So you can type in here where you're from, and if you have a brief training question, climbing question, performance question, I'll try to answer it as best as I can. I don't know it all, but I know a lot because I've been doing this for 45 years, and I'm happy to share my expertise with you. Now, one more thing about Training Café. Each episode we have a shout out, and this shout out to multiple folks. I'm an American climber, so I root for Team USA, though I enjoy watching athletes from all the countries compete. The World Cup circuit is now in Europe. It was in Villars this past weekend. And what do you know? Americans just crushed it. A rare gold medal for Sean Bailey, rare American gold medal, because, other climbers, other countries have tended to dominate World Cup lead for years, but Sean Bailey comes home with the gold. And Colin Duffey, his first podium in World Cup competition, the young climber from Colorado, winning bronze. And also Natalia Grossman, a young American climber, a Fizzy Vantage athlete. She wins another medal, this time in lead, her first lead medal, a bronze. She has previously won a couple of golds at World Cup in bouldering. So she is just dominating, and brand new on the scene. She and Colin, both, this is their first season competing at the World Cup level. So that's pretty amazing. So kudos to those guys, this week's shout out. Moving on to the main topic today, perhaps you tuned in to hear me talk a little bit about what a deload week may bring to your schedule, what value it has in terms of climbing performance and training adaptations, and perhaps even injury prevention. If you're a recreational climber, climbing a few days a week, or going to the gym a few days a week, or just training a couple of days a week and not really grinding at it, well, then there's really no need for one of these deload weeks where you cut back on your training or even stop training for a few days. If you're kind of that recreational climber and just, climbing for fun and, doing it a few days a week, you can just continue on that kind of a schedule indefinitely, and your body can always be kind of recovering and catching up just fine without the need for a deload week. Now, on the other side of the coin is folks perhaps like you and me who climb a lot, or at least train a lot, and throughout the year are grinding week after week after week. I've been on a road trip for a few weeks, and if you're pushing yourself hard, and or even at home in a training schedule pushing yourself hard, there can be a point where there's diminishing returns. If you're in a training mode, maybe after 3 or 4 hard weeks, you're not recovering in your typical 1 or 2 days off. You start to notice, you're losing your high-end strength and power. Maybe you're feeling some soreness in your tendons and joints. Perhaps, you just kind of feel off. And same thing if you're on a road trip like I am. You go on a trip for a few weeks and you want to climb a lot, because that's what you've been training for. And, if you're an outdoor climber as I am, you want to maximize the experience. And, you go to a new area and you want to kind of consume a lot of routes. And perhaps you're projecting something and you're really going at it hard. But again, like training hard, there's a point where your body just starts to fall behind. And there are a lot of variables, age and genetics and, your nutrition and rest habits, what type of condition you're in heading into the trip. Are you really fully recovered? Did you do a proper taper before your trip so that you were kind of starting off at a peak, let's say, or, did you arrive on the trip or at your location to climb and you were already in a bit of a state of fatigue? Then you might need that break, that deload week after 2 weeks rather than maybe after 4 weeks if you started the trip fresh and kind of going at it pretty hard at the crags for a few weeks straight. Then your body starts to fall behind. And again, there's no hard and fast rules here because there are so many variables. But some of the things you want to look for, whether you're at a training block at home or whether you're outdoor climbing a lot, maybe on a road trip as I am, some of the things you want to look, kind of consider. Well, first of all, if you have more than one day where you kind of feel generally fatigued, a sense of malaise, hard to get out of bed, hard to get warmed up or motivated, that can be kind of a sign that your nervous system is not recovered. You kind of have that central fatigue. If you're doing your warm-up climbs or your warm-up exercises, if you have like a little hangboard that I travel with the tension flashboard to do some warm-up activities. I have it hanging in a tree branch at the campsite. And so I can do my warm-up activities each morning after breakfast. And just going through that kind of progressive warm-up, you get a sense of where you're at, kind of comparing it to previous days and previous trips, just kind of knowing how you should feel as you go through that warm-up process. You can get a sense of maybe, some building fatigue, a loss of peak finger force. Like for me, when I warm up on the tension board, one of the last things I do is a two-handed, two-finger pocket hang on first pad, like a 20 millimeter edge. And, if I go through that full warm up and get to that last kind of two-finger hang and I can hold it for 5 to 7 seconds, that's a sign, for me, based on my past experience, that I pretty much have my high-end finger strength that day. But then there's some days, like the last few days here, because I've been climbing for a couple of weeks, where I go through the warm-up and at the end of the warm-up, I can't stick, that two-finger pocket hang for more than a second or two. And, that's evidence to me. I've done my warm-up. I've turned on my nervous system. I've kind of got the blood flowing and the synovial fluid moving in my joints, but yet I can't hold that pocket hang the way I'm used to. And so there's evidence I'm not fully recovered. That's hard, kind of scientific evidence that, perhaps I need more rest days, maybe even a deload week. Some other things, I mentioned sore muscles, soreness in your tendons, all signs that your body is falling behind. If you maybe come down with a little bit of a cold, a bit of an illness where you feel off, that can be a sign that your body is falling behind. Or just going out and working on your project and being kind of bummed out that you don't feel better, that you're not making progress. It could be that, again, you need at least a couple of days off and perhaps a deload week as well. So again, when you would want to do this has to be very personalized and should be somewhat evidence-based. Yeah, you can base it on feel, subjective feel, that fatigue, that malaise, that sense of being off. But uh, you know, some days you just kind of wake up and feel that way. You had a bad night's sleep, and it doesn't mean you're going to climb bad. So that's why I think having some, collecting some data in the form of like going through your normal warm-up exercises. As I mentioned, I kind of have a couple things that I do on the hangboard at the end of my warm-up that are tests of my finger strength and my pulling power and core strength, and that little bit of data can be revealing that you might have had a bad night's sleep and woke up not feeling right, but you go through the warm up and all of a sudden you test yourself and you have your full strength. And so you don't need a day off. You don't need a deload week. You just needed to kind of get woken up and warmed up and get that bad night's sleep behind you. And you can probably proceed on your regular training or climbing schedule. But again, a few days in a row, you start to have measurements that things are off. In my case, after 3 weeks on a climbing trip, I'm an older guy, my body's falling behind. And so that's why it's a good time to kind of pack up and drive to another area, take a few days off, and hopefully get my body to reset so I can, climb back up near my peak again in a few days. Now, what should you do during this deload week? And it doesn't have to be exactly a week. For a young climber, you might just need 2 or 3 days, probably 3 days off from your normal schedule. And again, what is a normal climbing schedule? Let me, if you're on a road trip, or even if you're training at the gym, if you're a beginner climber, you might be, or let's say more of an intermediate climber, you might be, 1 day on, 1 day off, 1 day on, 1 day off, and just do that indefinitely. If you're a well-trained climber, a more advanced climber, and I'm a little older, but I kind of put myself in that category. You're on a road trip and you want to maximize your climbing experience, you're probably doing something more like a 2-day on, where you're climbing 2 days in a row, 1 day off, 2 day on, 1 day off. But you do that, you go through that cycle a few times, and the 1 day off isn't enough. And sometimes what I do is 2 on, 1 off, 2 on, 1 off, 2 on, 2 off, and that 2 off is a kind of a mini deload that allows you to catch up so you can go back to the 2 on. But that, again, has to be highly personalized. How hard are those days? Are they half days, or are they all day climbing? Are those climbing days projecting, where you're really working hard, high power requirements? Or are you out doing a lot of high volume climbing that's submaximal, like trad climbing, multi-pitch climbing? Again, so there's a lot of factors that go into what is the ultimate schedule. And this is something that you have to kind of intuit to some degree, but also based on experience and, tracking your performance and your climbing and kind of knowing what you're doing day in and day out, what kind of schedule you're on. One thing that I often do is, if I'm kind of in a mode of wanting to climb a lot, doing more submaximal routes, like with my wife, here at Rifle, we had a couple of days where we just did more moderate type climbs, which at Rifle are still pretty stressful, but that type of, submaximal climbing, you can do a lot of, and you could do it, a couple days, 3 days in a row. But if you're here beating yourself up on a really powerful project with a lot of squeezing and core requirements and finger, strength and power requirements, well, then I was going to kind of more of a 1 on, 1 off when I was kind of trying to project closer to my limit. So again, you want to, schedule your climbing and your training kind of to fit the intensity and the volume of your climbing. Now, getting back to how long should the deload be? Well, it doesn't have to be a week, but I'm a big fan of, if it's truly going to be a deload, 2 days is kind of just a typical, recovery after a hard week. But if you've been at it for a few weeks in a row, then you need something a little longer, probably 4 to 7 days. And that's not 4 to 7 days of total rest where you sit around and watch TV or work at the computer or whatnot. You can and should still be active. You want to, get your metabolism started each day. Go for a walk or a hike or a bike ride, or go out to the crag and belay a friend while you're taking some of your deload days. You could do some very light loading of your finger flexors and tendons, kind of like those protective sessions that I've been big on promoting in recent years, where you're doing some low load, low volume hangs that just kind of apply force to the tendons, but not stress the nervous system or the muscles much. That can be very healthy for connective tissues, gets the synovial fluid moving through them and helps them recover. That coupled with good nutrition, high protein diet, can really jumpstart recovery of your connective tissues and your muscles. So being active during the deload period, that 4 to 7 day period, is fine, but you don't want to overdo it. If you're going out and running 10 miles or hiking up steep hills, well, then that is hard on the body, and your cardiovascular system, your heart, your nervous system is working hard if you're hiking up hills. If you're at elevation, you're consuming less oxygen and your body gets overloaded more quickly. So I think you want to, during those breaks from climbing, those deload periods, err on the side of doing too little rather than doing too much, and letting if things get carried away and escalate, well, then it's not a deload week anymore. So kind of in summary, those deload periods, they're not total rest. Don't think of it as a week off from training, but more a week away from high level training or high level climbing. You can still be active and you can still do some low load training. You could do some, probably easy multi-pitch climbing if you really were disciplined and didn't let it escalate into something that was making you work hard. And after that deload week, the beauty is your body has then bounced back to kind of a peak level, kind of like after that training taper at the end of a training cycle. Your body recovers and is at kind of a new high, and able to then maybe climb your best on a project, and reach some of your climbing goals on your trip. Whereas if you're on a longer road trip and you never take that deload week, your body just is breaking down and the fatigue is accumulating, and your nervous system, your connective tissues, your muscles are falling farther and farther behind. If you're just endlessly going 2 on 1 off, 2 on 1 off, you do that for 3, 4, 5 weeks, and it's going to be a downhill slide. And that's, it's a good reason, if you look at the pros, when they go on climbing trips, I've observed and been around a lot of pro climbers. My sons are kind of at that pro level right now, but even people like Alex Megos, he's famously will go on a trip somewhere for just 3 or 4 weeks, and then he's back to Germany to recover and then do another little short training block before his next trip. The really smart pros don't go on those 8 or 12 or endless road trips because they know their body is going to fall behind and they attempt injury, they're not performing well. And if they want to climb at their very best, you need to kind of have a plan, a system. And that system is, 2, 3, 4 weeks of hard climbing at your destination on your project, and then a deload period, then a little training block, and then back to back to the project or back to the next road trip. Okay, so enough said there. I've talked for about 20 minutes so far, and I need to keep this short because my laptop battery is running low. There's a lot of interference around here in terms of noise, and hopefully it's not too distracting because I'm sitting here at a Starbucks along a busy road in Rifle, Colorado. So just a few questions and then I'll sign off and we will reconvene in a couple weeks again. So appreciate everybody tuning in from around the United States, and quite a few European visitors I see here: Sweden, Switzerland, Italy, Belgium, and some local folks as well, from Colorado and Indianapolis and so on and so forth. So let me just see here. Anybody got a question? Oh, someone from Germany. Thank you. And for those arriving late, how about you grab your coffee? Let's sip. It is the Training Cafe, after all. Okay, question here. Do you know the smart hangboard called climbro? It can measure your force and analyze performance, and it communicates with your phone. Yeah, actually, I do know about that. In fact, I have one at my home. It was developed by a researcher and a coach in Czech Republic, who I've met at climbing conferences in Europe, and it's an excellent tool. I'm sure it's quite expensive. I didn't purchase it, but had it sent to me for testing, and I can tell you it's a premium piece of equipment. And as things stand now, it will only sync up with Android phones, I believe, or perhaps they have the iPhone, the iOS software. Actually, I guess that is online now, but I had issues before I left on my trip getting it to sync with my phone. So I don't know if that was my phone's issue or whatnot, but I do think it's a very high quality piece of equipment. It's probably not the hangboard you want for your day-to-day training, because it's got very limited edges as you would want on a testing board. It's got just a couple of key features, different size holds to test your finger force on. And I think as they get the app and such up and running, it could be a very useful tool, especially for coaches and climbing gyms. It might be perhaps a bit expensive for a home training customer, but perhaps not if you're really into that kind of thing, as I am. There are other boards or systems on the market for doing force testing. The Entropy force plate from Canada, which I also have, and that integrates with your phone and allows you to do finger force testing. The Tindig device from, I think, Norway. There's a few different tools out there that try to do the same thing. And I think they all are effective at doing that. My experience in doing finger force testing is that it's all the many variables that come into play in testing that introduce error. So the force plate or the climbro board are probably very accurate in measuring finger force. Most of them have a pretty high sample rate, so you can even see rate of force development. However, and I don't want to get into it, but many things that affect testing of finger force, like your arm position, how engaged your shoulder is and your core is, and how, what you're doing with your lower body when you're contracting your fingers. The warm-up you do, will determine, how much of a warm-up you do will determine your finger force. What you did the previous day or two will affect your finger force. What time of day affects your finger force. The ambient conditions, the weather conditions, temperature and humidity affect your finger force. So you kind of get the idea that unless you can control all of those things and replicate, every time you test those things, then the numbers are hard to compare. Like if you're going to do, testing once a month to see where you're at, you would want to try to replicate the same conditions, the same arm position, the same warm-up, even right down to nutrition, whether you had caffeine or not, or the time of day. Your finger force changes throughout the day. It tends to be higher in the PM than in the AM. So you need to be aware of all those things when you're doing finger force testing. Okay, a couple more questions here. Let me see here. I injured my knee, will not be able to climb for a few months. When it comes to finger training, should I train max hangs or switch between max hangs and repeaters? Depends. If you're only a boulderer, then you could probably just worry most about maintaining your high-end finger strength. If you're a route climber, then you want to do something that also helps maintain strength endurance. So repeaters would be the ticket there. And I think even for a boulderer, I think it would be good to have some diversity in training, because if you can't climb because of your knee, I think the more you can kind of mimic climbing with your training during this break from climbing, the better. Now, you can't boulder, you can't climb because of your knee, but you can do a lot of different core exercises. You can do antagonist muscle training. And I would say if you're training at home, like with a hangboard, maybe twice a week do a max strength type workout, which are short, brief, intense hangs. And then 2 other days a week do repeaters and more of a strength endurance protocol. And that will go a long way to trying to maintain your climbing endurance. I mean, you will lose some because you're not climbing, but the repeaters will help somewhat. And the max hangs on the hangboard and weighted pull-ups and things like that should more or less maintain your maximum strength, so that when you return to climbing, your grip strength and your max pulling strength and power might be pretty much where they were at, or maybe even better. Before your injury, but the endurance naturally does fall off a bit when you're away from climbing, but the repeaters will help a bit in maintaining that. Question about collagen and the proper timing of it. Of course, I've been a big follower of the research on coupling the consumption of hydrolyzed collagen with tendon loading. I've been following the research for 5 or 6 years, and I founded my company PhysiVantage 3 years ago to develop a climber-specific product called Supercharged Collagen, which you can learn more about at physivantage.com. Long story short, consumption of hydrolyzed collagen on an empty stomach before you train, there's very good evidence, both in the lab and anecdotally from thousands of climbers, that it can improve tendon health, joint health in hard training climbers, and those with that are hard on the fingers, like sport climbers, hard boulderers, crack climbers, or just aging climbers like myself. And what has been shown to work in the lab, and it's kind of important to point out that what is unique about hydrolyzed collagen as a protein source over other protein sources is that it has a very high concentration of 2 amino acids, glycine and proline. Those amino acids are present in other animal products in small doses. They're almost absent from vegan sources of protein, which is a concern for vegan climbers. But in any case, the hydrolyzed collagen, the supercharged collagen, as we produce it and sell it to climbers, has the highest glycine and proline content of any food on the planet. So when you consume a dose of this before you climb, before you train, into the empty stomach, the supercharged collagen digests and releases a spike of these 2 amino acids into the bloodstream 30 to 60 minutes after you consume it. So it's circulating around your body, available to muscles and tendons and organs throughout your body. But here's the interesting thing, is that spike of glycine and proline can be directed to a given body part by loading it, because connective tissues get their nutrition. They uptake nutrients from the circulation in your body by way of loading, fluid diffusion, when you load a tendon in your finger or your shoulder or your elbow, it's kind of like squeezing a sponge in a bucket of water. Fluid moves in and out, not as profoundly as it does in squeezing a sponge in a bucket of water, but you get the idea. That is how connective tissues are nourished. Blood flow is virtually absent from connective tissues, whereas muscles get their nutrients from blood flow. So the blood flow during exercise, after exercise, throughout the day nourishes muscles and allows them to recover. But connective tissues are only nourished, or primarily nourished, during loading. And that's why it's important to consume and get that spike of glycine and proline into your bloodstream before you load the tendons. So you consume it 30 to 60 minutes before you train, before you climb, and then you go load your tendons, and you can preferentially target those nutrients to those connective tissues in that way. If you're rehabbing a knee from knee injury, as a previous question, you would want to consume the supercharged collagen 30 to 60 minutes before you do your knee rehab exercises. And that is something that's being done by top surgeons around the world, because they've seen the research, and there's evidence that perhaps you can double collagen synthesis by using that protocol. And by the way, why glycine and proline? Why are they so important? Well, connective tissues, the collagen that comprises them, is a repeating sequence of 3 amino acids: glycine, proline, and then any other amino acid. And so essentially 2/3 of your tendons and ligaments are comprised of those 2 amino acids, glycine and proline. So the more you can consume those 2 amino acids, especially before you work out, the more you're giving your body what it needs to build stronger connective tissues, cartilage, joints, and hence the kind of the science behind the research and experience of athletes and others who have joint and tendon issues gaining positive results from kind of coupling that supercharged collagen with the tendon loading and recovery. So it's a pretty advanced protocol. It's not difficult, but it does require the discipline to execute it just right. And I've done a few videos and written several articles about it. Again, if you visit physivantage.com or my website, trainingforclimbing.com, you can read up more on the science, and you'll see footnoted the research by Keith Barr and Wells and others who have kind of revealed the value in doing this. And yes, it does work if you are disciplined to execute it just right. So again, the proper timing is to do it before you train. I like doing a serving of supercharged collagen first thing in the morning on an empty stomach, and then I do just a light loading protocol on my fingers and my arms and shoulders with some pull-ups and some easy hangs. I do that basically every morning when I'm at home, or I do it, as my warm-up when I'm at the crags, and then consuming another scoop of the supercharged collagen to get more glycine and proline into the system sometime later on in the day, before a second workout or before maybe a period of afternoon climbing. So that is kind of the timing. I don't think it's ideal to mix it with a meal. I think you're better to do it on an empty stomach. Okay, just one or two more questions, and I'm going to sign off here before my laptop battery dies, and this background noise drives me crazy. Okay. How to get activated. I often feel power best after training and within third or fourth burn on a project. A mixture of tired and max anaerobic. I'm not exactly sure. Perhaps that doesn't translate perfectly. But I think, I talked about warming up at the crag, the importance of that. But I don't think you can just do your warm up and then just jump on your 8C, 14B project. I do think there's value in doing 1 or 2 warm up climbs. If you have access to a climbing gym near your crag, perhaps you can do your complete warm-up at a climbing gym. Like when Adam Andro was working on Silence, he had a bouldering wall and a warm-up gym kind of built for him in a barn near his route. So he could go straight to his route and go for a send-go, first up. Margot Hayes, however, when she was working biography in Seiyus, a few years ago, she would hike uphill to the crag and then do a 13A and then a 13C warm-up climb, and then she would go give 2, 3, 4 goes on biography, and that was her approach. Me here in Rifle, I will do the warm-up on a portable hangboard at the campground, and then I'll go climb a 511A and a 512A, and then I'll get on my project, which here has been kind of 12 plus or 13 minus type routes. You have to find out what works for you. And in terms of getting your optimal power, usually it is that second or third go. Sometimes you'll send first go if you had a really good warm up, but oftentimes you need that specific warm up, that full turn on the route, and so your second or third go might be the best of the day. Fourth or fifth go, I'm not sure. If you did a pretty good warm up, I think by fourth or fifth go, you might have diminishing returns and actually kind of be wasting energy. So if you are projecting, go through that warm-up process, and then 2 or 3 goes. If it's a very rigorous route, that might be all you can do in a given day. If it's a shorter route, if it's a boulder, or if it's a route where the crux is low, well then maybe you get a fourth or fifth good go on in a given day. Okay, here he can hang on a Beastmaker one arm for 5 seconds. The Beastmaker Edge, I think he's probably talking about the outside one, which is around 20 or 22 millimeters. And so before training, he can hold it for 5 seconds. After training, warming up and campusing for 20 seconds. So yeah, that's not uncommon. That just speaks to how long and it can take to get your nervous system fully turned on. A 15-minute warm-up is not enough to get your nervous system up to peak power. And for me, if I am at home training, it is often after a 30-minute warm-up and 30 minutes of actual training that I feel like I'm most turned on. Like if you're going to do a finger force test, you might do it an hour into your workout. But again, everybody's different, and it depends on what you did for your warm-up. You have to find out what works for you, and that comes through experience, lots of experience. Okay. Yeah, so a couple of warm-up routes I think is probably the best strategy. I think, I'm now at 37 minutes, and I'd rather just keep this short and sweet here today. But I appreciate you, dear climber, for joining me here in the cafe today. I'm heading to Wyoming, where I'll be disconnected for much of the next week or so, but we will convene again. Continue to follow Training for Climbing Facebook page, Instagram, and YouTube channel. Subscribe, and you'll get notifications of when I will do these training cafes. And please do help spread the word. I really appreciate when I see this audience growing more and more globally. We are all one climbing family, one Training for Climbing family who enjoy sipping coffee together. And so, yeah, do spread the word. Be healthy, be strong. Hopefully you can get out and do some climbing yourself this summer, as I am doing right now. Though I do need to get back to the office soon and get caught up on work. And I'm sure you can relate, trying to balance all different life's activities as we strive to do. But if you're passionate, you can achieve and do a lot in a 24-hour day or 7-day week, and find your own best personal system for success. That's, I guess, the message I like to always communicate is, just as you develop a system for training for climbing and climbing your best at the crag, you can develop your own personal system for kind of success in life. And we're all on a different journey, but make your own journey the most engaging and hopefully rewarding as you kind of explore that long arc of the climbing career and the climbing life. And so those are some of the things I enjoy sharing with you as well. Not just stronger fingers, but just how to kind of enjoy life more and hopefully kind of make the most and enjoy the most of every day that we have here on this third rock from the sun. Okay, so with that, I will sign off. Wishing you a great week ahead, and see you in a few weeks. Bye-bye.